Okay, now can we write a riff that locks into both the repetitive drum loop and the changing melody? Yeah, you bet we can. We're just gonna wanna specifically use a piano at some point, which I did. And I put OTT on it because I'm a psychopath. Hey, thanks, Navi. Hi. Question. I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom a lot this week, and I'm sure you have too, and it got me thinking, what if the soundtrack for riding up to Ganondorf's doorstep in a DIY monster truck covered in flamethrowers and laser beam guns and cannons was heavier, like a lot heavier? Well, I'm happy to say that I, Geoffrey Day, have an answer for you, and let's just say that if the Doom Eternal soundtrack had a piano in it, this is probably what you'd end up with. As always, you can skip to the end of the video to hear the final product right now, but I really do hope you stick around for the context, because I think you're gonna need it. In fact, the Zelda franchise as a whole is just beautiful and magical and epic. Every mainline game is a warrior's journey of a blonde-haired boy that's trying to save the kingdom from the evil presence and also save the girl, and you're surrounded by like wood and stone and castles and sort of like a mix of European architecture and Japanese themes, and it's fantasy stuff. So knowing all that, you can see why they decided to go with music that sounds like this. And not like this. It's gonna be a challenge to figure out what parts we even want to keep from Zelda and what parts we're gonna replace with something louder. So I'm thinking, let's start with a Zelda music retrospective, and then I'm gonna show you the fine details of how I distorted the absolute f*** out of it. Cool? Okay, let's do it. Like many very old Nintendo franchises, the first Zelda soundtracks were written so they could be played back on a console that had about as much processing power as a russet Burbank potato. And with just enough sounds available to make drums, a bass line, and some lead instruments, you can hear right off the bat that the composer uses these tools to make harmonies. Even when the number of instruments increases, this continues through every soundtrack, over and over, just harmonies that accompany the main melody of the songs. And hey, I'm making a list of things that sound like Zelda music, so let's add that one to start. That's a good one. Actually, it's worth mentioning that the same guy, Koji Kondo, is the solo or lead composer on nearly every mainline Zelda game up to Twilight Princess. So if you've ever wondered why Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sound super different from the rest of the series, one of the reasons is that there are 3 completely new composers now. These composers are not new to Nintendo, though. They have been part of the music department for a long time, some of which have worked with Koji. But altogether, their relevant game credits are Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, tons of Pikmin games, and a handful of Animal Crossings. I want to talk more about Breath of the Wild and, the new games going forward, but let's jump back in time for now. Hold that thought. So once we're out of chiptune land, I noticed that the game soundtracks have this variety in their styles, but also will stick to their guns in certain areas. So to start, every Zelda soundtrack loves their orchestral fanfare. And they love a proper horse riding song. Oh, we can't forget to take notes. Let's add orchestral fanfare to our list. But in every game, there are unique areas to explore, and sometimes we get stuff like this nylon guitar and accordion combo. It reminds me of Super Mario Sunshine, actually. And we have this one, which, if I didn't know any better, was clearly inspired by living out in the good old American countryside. I think we can safely ignore those songs, though. It's more like flavor for the games as opposed to being a core Zelda thing. Something else that I noticed is that there's always some battle music that has a lot of dissonance or randomness or like strange intervals. Yeah, that's a pretty good one, actually. Let's add chaotic notes to our list. Cool. Now, remember how a minute ago I said I wanted to talk about the new game, Legend of Wild, Breath of the Kingdom? The best way that I can describe the shift in tone is piano everywhere, because it exists, and we can. For example, it has been established that harps are for the fairy fountain, so that's just how it is. And then in Breath of the Wild, they decided, nah. Does Yasuaki Iwata hate harps, or does he hate fairy fountains? That's a question, and it's not like they don't have harps in the soundtrack though, because here's one. But there's still piano on top of the harp. I think they don't like harps. Heck, another demonstration is the music from the final battle, Phase 2 with Ganon. But to give credit where it's due, somebody in Nintendo did remember that Breath of the Wild is still a Zelda game, and they do start with the classic epic orchestral sound for the first phase of the Ganon fight. I'm absolutely not a Luddite, and I love when companies try to experiment with a franchise's musical identity to keep things fresh, but clearly I am heated about this for no good reason. I'm just gonna add pianos to the list, because you know what? I feel like this soundtrack is holding a gun to my head. Oh, and actually, before I forget, there is one other thing I want to add to the list. It's a weird word if you say it a bunch of times. Fourths. Remember how we already have harmonies on our list? Well, one thing I think sounds particularly Zelda, especially in the newest games, is a very specific interval between notes. And because they can explain it better than me, here's a clip from a video by the amazing jazz pianist Charles Cornell.
Listen to that. Not really sure what that is. I think we're using a lot of this parallel fourths motion. We had this flourishing piano in Breath of the Wild as well. Now, of course, this is much more mellow, much more chilled out. Oof, absolutely beautiful.
You know, I'm looking at my list, and I think we have a good one to start with. It's about time to make some Argent metal. That is Mick Gordon Doom Eternal-inspired electronic heavy metal, the heaviest metal I can think of. Sound good to you? Sounds good to me. Okay, let's do it. So I asked around about what Zelda songs I should cover, and I got so many answers that I just said, screw it, I'm doing a medley. I transcribed a bunch of Zelda songs and narrowed them down to ones that are either repeat themes throughout the franchise, or that represent a particular game well, or both. And they all have to work together in one song without sounding like a mixtape, so sadly I had to throw out a couple of good songs, but that's okay. Alright, if we keep most of the arrangement as is, we should be able to cross off orchestral fanfare and fourths right off the bat, yeah. For those of you with refined tastes, you know that Argent Metal has these things. So let's start with the synths. It's been a while since I've gotten some quality time with my Eurorack gear. I'm gonna try to just run Serum directly into my fuzz units and then into my tube units and see what we get on the other side. Okay, all done. And many of you know that Eurorack and hardware stuff is more of an art than a science, and you kind of just mess around until you get something good. Let me show you what I made. A lot of these sounds are just using Serum's noise sampler and then smashing it through distortion. I'm finding I get a lot of cool sounds that way. And fun fact, since I can put any audio in the sampler, I just recorded my hardware's noises and put them in there. I mean, at this point, I don't even need my Euro rack anymore. I'm just gonna throw it in the trash. All right, checking our list, and I got to work on some harmonies, so I think we're just gonna cross that off now too. Here's a question for you. What makes Doom soundtrack guitar riffs so memorable and so heavy? If you guessed the number of strings on the guitar, you're wrong. The answer is rhythmic repetition. Okay, it's a little bit about the 8 and 9 string guitar stuff, and the tone stuff too, but maybe only like 25%. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is because we have these Zelda song melodies that are usually supported by chord changes and rhythm changes and basically just much more musicality than your heavy industrial type stuff would have. So to get things much closer to heavy, yes, we need brutal tone, but we also need to find a pattern that we can use as an anchor. The way that I like to figure this out and figure out if it's working is to create a drum loop first, and then the kick and the snare will tell me where the notes need to be. So now that we have a drum loop, let's put the melody on top just to make sure it still sounds good. Yeah, it does. And okay, now can we write a riff that locks into both the repetitive drum loop and the changing melody? Yeah, you bet we can. Aw, shit, son, that's fucking heavy. Oh, really quick aside, I actually do deep dives on Patreon that are like an hour long, so if you want more technical details about any of these songs, that's a good place to start. And also, as a Patreon member, if you have questions, you can just ask me directly. Now, looking at our list, it still has piano on it, and I think there's no way around that. We're just gonna wanna specifically use a piano at some point, which I did. And I put OTT on it because I'm a psychopath. And hey, the Breath of the Piano soundtrack has a really cool lick for fighting a guardian, and I think it would be awesome to use the notes from it for a variety of things. Okay, now it starts to get cool, because if I change the speed of the notes and create new patterns, or maybe even plug it into synthesizers, you get this progressive metal type of sound. Back to the list, this crosses off piano, but it also crosses off chaotic notes, haha. Still a small problem though. As you can see, I crossed off all the items on the list, great, but I still don't have anything for the Lost Woods part of the song that I planned to do. I spent a bunch of time getting a cool, like, whistly sound for the melody, but besides that, I'm not really sure. I could just, I don't know, delete that part from the arrangement. Hey, thanks, Navi. Maybe you're not so annoying after all. Okay, shut the fuck. Here's what I ended up doing for Lost Woods. Just kidding, I'm not gonna spoil it for you yet, but you won't be waiting long, because we're finally done, and I can say for certain this song is full of heavy metal and fanfares and fourths. So, without further ado, my Legend of Zelda Argent Metal Medley. Enjoy. So, does this song make you want to strap a Korok to his own rocket and shoot it straight into Ganon's mouth? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if I missed any Zelda songs you were hoping to hear in the medley. There are a lot to choose from. I can't imagine I got all of them. You know who's metal AF? Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom. Kina did an amazing job on this artwork, and I kinda wish she was the main character of the game, to be honest. Her links are in the video description if you want to check out all her other work. If you want to support my work and these videos, as well as get access to the deep dives and stems for this song, plus a whole bunch of other stuff, please consider becoming a patron. The credits rolling on screen right now are folks already taking advantage of these benefits, and to my patrons, I just want to say thank you so much for your continued support. It means a lot. You can download this song on Bandcamp for free, or actually for any price you think is best, and you can also listen on streaming platforms by checking out the links in the pinned comment below. I've got covers planned, I've got originals planned, I've got an album release planned. I'm doing some soundtrack work, I've got some other gigs going on. It's gonna be a busy summer. I'll try to keep you updated as much as I can, but until then, I've been Geoffrey Day. You've been playing Tears of the Kingdom instead of actually watching this video. It's fine, me too. And I hope you'll be back again for the next one. See ya.